Now, John Paul II says the body also speaks God's word, God's truth. There's an inherent sign language or body language. Okay? Now, some are cultural, right? So if I put my thumbs up, you'd put your thumb back up and smile, right? But if I was to do that in some cultures, I'd probably get a punch in the face, right? Because that's the equivalent of another digit that we put up in some cultures. But some are universal. So there was a psychological experiment where they gave different facial expressions to people from different cultures, and they all reported the same thing. You know, this represented happiness. This, anger. You know, this, surprise and wonder. Same thing. What John Paul II is, sexual union also expresses the same thing, which is, take me, I'm all yours, I'm yours forever. In other words, I love you. If you're expressing with your body that you love somebody, but you don't really love them, you are, in a sense, lying. The body, you're expressing with your body that which isn't really true. It's like if I was angry at you and I was smiling. That would be a lie. There's a word for that called facade, right? That's where we get the word face. And facade is to put on, put on a false front, something that doesn't really reflect what we feel inside. This is why sexual gratification is not about experience or technique, but about truth. The degree to which the body speaks the truth is the degree to which you will be sexually gratified. In session 6 next week, I'm going to give statistics to prove this. Okay? But we'll hold off on that for now. Now, this is similar as well in the spiritual life. The degree to which you speak the truth liturgically is the degree to which you'll be fulfilled spiritually. And that gets us into a discussion about Mass and marriage. There are two parts of the Mass. What are they? That's right. Liturgy of the Word and the Liturgy of the Eucharist. Each of these parts has two movements. And we don't really teach this anymore, so probably nobody knows. But in the Liturgy of the Word, we speak to God, and God speaks to us. So we tell him we're sorry in the penitential rite. We glorify him in the Gloria. And then the priest collects all of our prayers and offers it in the opening prayer. And then after we've spoken to God, he speaks back to us through his word, the readings, and in the homily. Now, in the Liturgy of the Eucharist, we give to God, and God gives to us. So at the offertory, when we bring up the bread and the wine, we're supposed to, that's supposed to be a symbol of everything that we offered, all we've done, all we have to offer, and we give it to God. It's like, place yourself on, some people have said, it's like I was at Our Lady of Lourdes, and Mason was leading the music, and he said, place yourself on that altar. He was telling the people at the offertory, and that's what we do. And in return, God gives to us through Holy Communion. He gives himself and all he has to offer in his gift of grace. In marriage, there's also two parts, as we just discussed. There's the word, the vows, and then they give themselves to each other. And that's sexual union. And as we say, that's an encapsulation of what's supposed to take place in the whole marriage. And so husbands and wives give themselves to each other continuously all throughout their marriage. Vatican II called Mass the source and summit of the entire Christian life. Romans 12:1 tells us to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. And that's often been used in reference to the Mass. And there's a morning offering that talks about how we offer to God all of our prayers, all of our works, all of our joys, all of our sufferings. And we do this every day, but especially at the Mass. That is where we come and we take everything that we've done throughout the week, all of our prayers, works, joys, and sufferings we've taken throughout the week, everything we hold dear, and we give it to God. And we say, I offer this to you as a sacrifice. Do with it as you will. And what does God do? Matthew 26:26. This is my body given for you. This is my blood which will be shed for you. God accepts our gifts, blesses them, transforms them by his grace, and returns them to us with himself. And he renews everything that we've offered and gives it to us through Holy Communion. And thus, strengthened and renewed, we're sent back out with the grace needed to live out the mystery that we just celebrated. So it's the summit toward which all of our works are directed, and it's the source from which all of our grace flows. And this is a cycle. Now, marriage has its own source and summit, at least in the natural sense. Okay. Because remember, marriage is a sign, a natural sign of the spiritual. And marriage has a source and summit, which is sexual union. The husband also gives his body for his bride. Throughout the day, throughout the week, in every moment, in all he does. And he surrenders to her everything he is and has. And as he does this throughout his marriage, he comes to the marriage bed and he gathers all of that up and he expresses that and communicates that through the marital embrace. And the vows that they spoke at the altar are thus renewed, and the love is strengthened through bonding, through tenderness, so that they can go forth and continue to live that out in the day-to-day life of marriage. So it's not surprising then that we speak of sexual union as a consummation. And that Jesus on the cross, you'll see this in the older translations, John 19:30, when he was just about to die, he said, now our translations now say it is finished. But the older translations were more literal, said it is consummated. Another name for source and summit is consummation. Consummation, S-U-M-M. That's where we get the word summit. And then it's also where we get the word consume. And when something is consumed, it is used up in order to propel or to fuel something. So when we consume food, it gives us energy. It really gives us life. When we consume gasoline, our cars go, which didn't happen with my car today. I went out to start my car and battery's dead. I had called Hudson frantically. I said, Hudson, can you you come back and give me a ride? I mean, for all the days that could happen. Thank you, Hudson. Because of him, I'm here. Thus, what is consumed is really a source, right? It's a source of energy for us. It's a source of motion for our cars. Now, John Paul II also speaks about sign and instrument. This consummation, as we said in marriage, is a sign of love and devotion. It's supposed to be an encapsulation of what goes on throughout the marriage. But it's also an instrument. Okay. There's a certain prayer that we have in some of our liturgies where we ask and beseech, quote, that we may hold fast in our lives what we celebrate in faith. Why? Because as we said, the body speaks a language. And if we express with our bodies what we do not believe, we're lying. Okay. And this happens not only in the marriage and in our relationships with others, but it happens also in the liturgy and our relationship with God. So when Lent begins, Joel, the prophet Joel, is read. And he says, rend your hearts and not your garments. Because rending your garments at the time was an outward expression of the interior act of rending your hearts or of sorrow for sin. And if you don't rend your hearts, if you're not truly sorry, then rendering your garments on the outside is a lie. Just like if you're not really giving to your spouse, this sexual union is a lie, right? The more you put in, the more you get out. That was something my grade 9 religion teacher said to me, because he said, you have a lot to offer, but you're not coming out with it. The more you put in, the more you get out. You know, another way of saying that is the more you give, the more you receive. That is a spiritual principle. In fact, I would call it one of the main spiritual principles. The degree to which you give to God is the degree to which you will receive from God. Or some say it, the degree to which you empty yourself is the degree God is able to fill you up with himself, right? And that applies to this.